Yeah, welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we explore the stories, system behind successful people and platforms shaping the podcasting world. Today's guest is Ali the Sanfilippo, podcast educator and founder of PodMatch, a platform that connects podcaster, hosts, and guests to make meaningful interviews easier and more effective. It's really a pleasure and honor to have you on the show, Alex.
Aro, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here as a listener of your show. It's an honor to be getting to spend this time with you. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, Alex, what inspired you to build PodMatch, and what problem were you originally trying to solve?
Yeah, I actually learned from my corporate job how to become an entrepreneur, more or less. I did 15 years in big corporate, corporate America. Worked a 9 to 5 job. Did
Mm,
15 years before I ever became an entrepreneur. But that really informed the way that I decided to start this business. And the way I still describe it, it was an unfair advantage. So
yeah.
many like entrepreneurs that just get straight into entrepreneurship, they lack a lot of the business discipline that you're taught from a corporate job. So for me, I walked into entrepreneurship really with being feeling like I was a huge step above most people to get into it. And I can remember even when I got started, people were asking like, "Man, Alex, how did you know how to do all these things?" I'm like, "Well, I've been doing it for 15 years,
Whoa.
just in a job." And so when I decided to leave corporate, it was because the corporation I was part of, Arrow, had gotten so big
Mm,
that I felt like a cog in the system. Like it was private when I started there, and ended up being a publicly traded company. I felt like I just was just there and I wasn't really contributing anymore. It was so big that any individual effort really didn't move the needle anymore. And and congratulations to that company. Congratulations to me even
yeah.
for being part of an organization that grew that much. But it just made me feel like I didn't have much of a purpose there.
Fact that the company actually more like grow into a big system, and that the office you are now occupying does not make much, much decibel again in terms of going to how big it is, and your impact is not that really being felt. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, what's what was the first place when you first had to encounter entrepreneurship while growing up? Was it more like you have a parent who were into entrepreneurs, or it was something you learned along the way, or something you get to see all around you while you were growing up?
Yeah, it's a mix of all those things. So my father was an entrepreneur, my mom was an entrepreneur
Mm,
as well. My dad had started a company I think a few years before I was even born, and my
ooh,
mom had been she was a dance instructor, like ballroom dance, and then also a hairstylist. So she worked at a house after I was born. So she just had people come to the house, and she was
wow.
like working straight from there. So like I had it modeled for me for sure. As early as I could, I wanted to work. Whether it was corporate, whether it was
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, I was like, I want to do something. And so I'll never forget it, man. I started off. One day I was like, "Oh, I saw some kids selling selling lemonade on the side of the street." I'm like, "Oh, I want to do that." And my dad got me all the
Yeah.
stuff for it. But here's the thing: like, I was a smart kid. I could do the math in my head and say this isn't a profitable business. Like, and
Yeah.
listen, as a young kid, that was weird. But I remember like while we were doing that, I was looking over at the golf course across the street from our neighborhood, and I was like, "Man, all these golfers are hitting the ball in the water. Like, they just keep on all of them, straight in the water. No one's good at golf, Arrow. So everyone just hits the ball straight in the water and gets another one." So I was like, "I wonder if we could get those out of the water, and I wonder if they would buy them back from us." And so what I ended up doing was starting to sell used golf balls, and that was like the first like I I mean, I'm doing air quotes here, but successful business that I had. Like I was
Yeah.
10 years old, but as a 10-year-old kid, me and some other kids in the neighborhood, we started fishing all these golf balls out of the water. And on Saturday morning, we would go sell them to golfers. And we would actually make really great money for kids at that age. We had all the money we needed for candy, video games, and soda, like all that we could
Yeah.
want. And
Yeah.
but it was really like weirdly, that was my introduction to business that actually worked. Again, I tried lemonade once. I was like, this is dumb. I tried golf. I was like, this works. And we did that repeatedly for a couple of years, me and a whole group of kids. And we just devoted our Saturday mornings to being able to actually to sell golf balls to back to golfers. And I learned a lot during that time, like how to negotiate with adults, uncomfortable
Mm.
situations, how to price things,
Wow.
how to organize other kids that didn't feel like working on a Tuesday night because
Yeah.
that's when we had to go get all of our inventory. All those things I learned at a young age. And I'll be real, like for the first time in my life, and I say first time in my life, I was 10 years old. But
Yeah.
at that point, it was the first time I realized I was actually good at something. Like it hit me. I'm like, wait, I'm kind of good at this. Like this makes sense to me. It all adds up in my head, and no one else around me seems to understand how this type of thing works. And so for me, that was my early introduction to entrepreneurship, but also just realizing that, hey, I'm going to do something in business throughout my life, which ultimately, again, ended up being a corporate career, then
Yeah.
followed by now entrepreneurship in the software space. But it all started from that experience as a young kid.
Yeah, amazing. It's really, really a whole lot. And just speak volumes to being encouraged by your parents too at that particular age that, yeah, being that they were entrepreneurs, you get to see them firsthand every now and then, bringing even the couples of business they do in home and actually more like seeing them doing it and you start doing it. It's really lovely. And yeah, really, it's really speak a whole lot of volumes. Um, so then you actually more like started PodMatch and that's really, really be amazing. When it comes to the 15 years you spent in the corporates or platform, what would you say you actually learn that is deeply applicable when it comes to entrepreneurship now?
Yeah. So in that corporate job, I mean, I learned a lot of things, but there was one when I was thinking about our conversation today, Arrow. Like, I wanted to show up with something I thought would be really impactful for your
Yeah.
listeners, and I can think of one story. When I first started that job, I started as a part time receiving clerk, so I was
Mm,
breaking down boxes and taking out people's trash. And that company was in the aerospace industry. We were parts manufacturers focusing below the atmosphere, so we were actually building aircraft parts, and I wasn't an engineer. I was just a guy working in the warehouse,
yeah.
like, and it started off that way. After
Yeah.
15 years, thankfully, I did continuously get promoted, but I hit this really dangerous place in business called middle management. When I hit that spot around year 7 or 8 probably, I worked my way up and I got to this middle manager level. It's really hard to get promoted again. It's really hard to love the job because you have to micromanage and you're being micromanaged,
Mhm.
it feels like. And that was a really tough spot for me. I felt like I was never gonna get out of that. I sat there for a while, but I'd say the biggest lesson I learned was actually from the CEO who took me under his wing at one point. We changed out CEOs a number of times, but the CEO that came in, the last one I ended up working for, his name was Paul. And Paul pulled me aside and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "I noticed that you work harder than anybody else here." I was like, "Oh, thank you for." I felt like I was seen. I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, thank you for that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it." And he's like, "Yeah, like anytime there's a job, like you're the first, like you show up first. You actually will do the work. You'll get your hands dirty and stuff like that." And I was like, "Yeah, thank you." He goes, "Stop doing that." And I was like, What? What do you mean stop doing that?" He's like, we want you to get promoted." He's like, "I want to level you up somewhere else." He goes, "If you can't figure out how to delegate that completely, you're
Ooh.
always going to be stuck here." He's like, "'Cause you're working harder than everyone else." And he goes, "I need you to teach other people to do that. I need you to stop." And like, so I'd show up in a suit and a tie every day unless I was gonna be helping with a project, and I'd show up in shorts and a t-shirt, and I'd do the dirty work. And so he's like, "You can't keep on doing that." He's like, "It's time for that to go away." And that was the toughest lesson for me to learn, was actually how to delegate the work, how not to micromanage, how to not be the front man or the face of something. And when I started really pulling back, what really helped me was just his conversation with me. And from then on, he kind of held me accountable. When I started learning, he said, "Hey, team, this is what I need you to do." And then I would just give the vision. When I learned to cast the vision and pull myself out of the equation, saying, "Hey, if you really need me, I will come here and give input, but I can't really help with this project. I'm working on something else that Paul has already given me to do." And learning how to articulate that and say that actually empowered other people to say,
Yeah.
"Ooh, I'd love to do what Alex does." Like I want to be the guy, like the front person. And it ended up ultimately leading me out of that middle management to being the person that was at one point I was in the C-suite before I left that company. And so my biggest takeaway was understanding that you don't always have to be the guy doing the work. The work
Mhm.
has to get done, but you got to think tools, resources, people. You got to think beyond yourself. And learning to do that was the single biggest lesson that I learned along the way in that 15-year career, was understanding that, you know what? I can't always be the guy to do everything because
Yeah.
I am finite. Me by myself can't do it, but I can find somebody, I can find tools, I can find resources, and then I can offload that so that I can stay focused on the bigger picture stuff or on the most pressing task at hand. Again, that's the big lesson that I learned throughout my business career.
Ooh, amazing tools, people, and reasons. Yeah, it's really amazing. And just sharing this particular insight just speak volumes. So entrepreneurship is more lovely when you get to delegate, so when you get to kind of look for tools that can actually fit in perfectly, look for people who could actually do it, and other than, yeah, do the more like, other than being the face of the job, just work at the background and having people to being able to design at one end or the other. Yeah, it's really amazing. And thank you so much. Um, so let's dive into the podcasting world. And what are the biggest mistake new podcaster make when trying to grow their audience from what you have seen and observed?
Yeah, I'll just share my story because it continues right where we left off. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned, like I did 15 years in big corporate, and then at that point, there was a bit of overlap, but I decided to start a podcast. That's ultimately what caused me to leave my
Mm,
job. But I didn't like hit the lottery, like start a podcast and get it right. No, my first podcast started and stopped with probably zero people ever hearing it. You
yeah.
know, like I gave up really quick. But the first thing I see is that people don't really know who it's for, and a lot
Mm,
of us, we say it's for ourselves. And listen, I do think that that's honorable. I think it's great that we're doing something for us, but it has to be twofold. There is some purpose it's for you, but there's also some purpose
yeah.
it's for an external individual or a reason, something that you want behind it, right? And I think that some of us, we get it wrong. We just make one of the two purposes. Whether it be ours or theirs, there still has to be two. There's one for us, and there's one for
Go
other
for
people.
it.
And there should be overlap in those, right? But for me, when I started my first show, I was curious, and that's not a bad thing. I just wanted to start it. I wanted to talk. It looked like fun, you know? So I
Yeah.
started a show.
yeah.
But if you would have asked me, like, who should be listening to this? I wouldn't know. I would just be like, "Oh, well, it's just the show I wanted to make." I had my own purpose, the show that Alex wanted to make, and that's not a very deep purpose, by the
Yeah.
way, right? Like, you hear that and you're like, "Oh, it's not a lot of depth there." And so I think the first mistake that people make when they get into podcasting, even as a podcast guest, by the way, podcast host or guest, is they don't really have the purpose figured out. And maybe they only have one half of it, the purpose for themselves or the purpose for other people, but it's again, it's lacking that depth. And so the solution, by the way, is just to take the time to actually figure out the real purpose behind it, the why behind what you're doing. And again, there's an internal why for yourself, there's an external why
Yeah.
that's for other people. Figuring those out and adding real depth behind it and defining who that individual is that's going to receive from that in a positive manner, that's step one. And I think that if we skip that like I did, you're going to crash and burn once again, like I did. And thankfully, I still had the corporate job at that point, right? There's
Yeah.
overlap, like I said, so that you could fall back on something. But if you want to really make it in any creative space, you've got to really sit down and figure out these purposes before doing anything else, before maybe even launching anything.
Yeah, amazing. Figure out the purpose. Who is it for? And why do you do what you do? And I think this really speaks good has been that when you be able to kind of get who is it for, you be able to kind of streamline the kind of persons you bring on the shows and the kind of audience you want to have. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So from your experience, what make a podcast truly successful beyond just downloading numbers?
Yeah. I think that when you can really deliver on the promise you're making. So once again, going back to the idea of your niche, your
Mm,
focus, who it's for, like understanding all those things, what makes it successful is actually being able to deliver on that promise for somebody. I've seen a lot of podcast arrow that the host of it will make a promise in the introduction or perhaps in the title and description of it. I say promise. Basically, they're saying this is what this
yeah,
is about. This is who it's for. And then the listener, like me, I listen and I don't get that. Like I don't hear anything that was promised in there. And so I think that what makes a podcast successful is the opposite of that. Like if you say this is going to help your career advance and I listen to it and it helps my career
yeah.
advance,
It will keep
that's a
showing up.
successful show. Right? Like, yeah, that is a I will keep on listening to that, and that's ultimately that's what causes a show to be successful, is delivering on the promise made and having listeners return. They'll show back up. If listen, you do me the right way, like I'm gonna show back up. I'm gonna come back. I'm
Yeah,
gonna be like, oh man, the Arrow helped me. The last couple episodes of the show were great. Is exactly what I needed. I'm gonna keep on listening for more. And so I think the first thing to define success of a podcast again is beyond knowing that why, that internal external why, but it's being able to deliver on the promise that that why makes. And when you have this and you are able to clearly articulate to people, that is a recipe for building a truly successful podcast. And so that's the external success, but there's also an internal success for it as well. What's it going to do for you? Because I've seen some shows that do a really good job with what I just explained. But then for the person making it, it's simply a labor of love. They put so much time, so much energy, so much effort into it, right?
yeah,
And they feel like no matter what I do, man, it's just more work, more work, more work. I don't know if I could define that as successful either. Right? Like if it's all labor of love, all giving out, and you're never getting filled
yeah,
from it, like eventually your cup's gonna run out. You can't keep on pouring out. An empty cup can't let anything out, right? And so it matters internally for you to determine what's going to make this a long-term something I can do long term, like something I can keep up with, because you need to be able to do that. Is it monetization? Is it growing my reputation? Is it growing my influence? And how does it connect with those things? But once again, it goes back to defining that. So first and foremost, it's a long answer. I don't mean for it to be, but a
yeah.
successful podcast is defined by you actually delivering on the promise for your listener.
Mm,
And two, it leading to something for you as well. And that could be different for all of us. Not everyone's trying to monetize their show. Not everyone's trying to grow their show necessarily. It's a matter of figuring out what does it actually need for me to
Mm.
keep up with this for a long, consistent period of time.
Yeah, amazing. They just speak a whole lot of volumes, being that, yeah, deliver on the promises so that the fact that when all these get to give in their time by coming on your show, at the end of the day, they get the particular promise you actually more like promise them, owing to the title and owing to what your show stand for. Yeah, amazing. And also at the end of the day, you being happy to show up consistently, owing to the fact that, yes, you have something to gain. And yeah, amazing, amazing. So what now separates that of guest, great guest, from an average guest into this space?
Yeah. So guesting in podcasting is becoming increasingly popular. Like actually, at time of recording this arrow, there is a. I just looked at the data, so I don't always have this memorized. But
Yeah.
right now, it's there's 76-to-1 ratio in podcasting. There's
Oh,
76 people trying to be a guest on every one podcast at any given time. So it's a bit out of balance. But the reality is, most podcast guests I would consider to be average. Like they just do an okay job. And I'm not trying to be rude by saying that or mean by any way, but because it's so out of balance, there's so many people becoming a podcast guest for the first time. People show up and they're like, okay, I'm just going to tell my stories, like, or I'm just going to share what
yeah,
I'll answer whatever they ask. I'll wing it. I'm a good speaker. I'm ready. But the reality is, there is one top contributing factor that separates an average guest from a truly excellent podcast guest. And the one contributing factor that stands out above all the rest is preparation.
yeah,
Preparation is the single biggest thing that will change how good a podcast guest does. And I'm not just saying that based off of my own experience. Actually, I think it was 1,300 podcast guests I spoke to figure out like what does the data show and what will they say is their top contributing factor, what makes them excellent at what they do. And the majority of people said, like, my superpower makes me so good at this is I show up ready. I show up prepared.
yeah,
And what this means is listening to the podcast, figuring out who the audience is, like what is the audience showing up for? What does the host want? Knowing this stuff and then figuring out how to in a really unique way deliver on that for the host, that goes such a long way. Again, figuring out like what does the host want, what do the listeners expect, and how can I deliver at the highest level? Figuring that out, taking the time to actually do that goes a really long way. Example, I mentioned being a listener to your podcast. I'm not blowing smoke by saying that. I've been listening to your podcast. I knew I was going to be here today,
yeah.
right? Like we planned this in advance. So I decided, guess which podcast I'm listening to exclusively until my guests on that show.
Oh,
What do you know? I'm right here. Here I am. I've been listening. And that makes me a very prepared guest. I'm not going to talk for 2 hours today because I know your podcast isn't 2 hours long.
yeah,
Like you did tell me that, but like also like I did my research to understand like this is what the expectation is going to be. What do the listeners want? I took my time to listen to other episodes to the points that seem to really be impactful. Knowing that once again helps me show up in the right manner. So the best guests, they simply show up prepared.
hmm,
They might not be the most well spoken. They might not be able to speak in sound bites. I struggle with that a little bit, which simply means like sharing your thoughts in less than a minute, right? Like I
yeah,
can't always do that. I ramble a little bit. I don't mean
yeah.
to, but at the very least, like I show up because I know who I'm here for, and that is that is that top contributing factor to what makes a truly expert guest.
Yeah, amazing. Having to plan ahead, knowing, just knowing what the audience is all about too, and yeah, having more like their stories tailored to how they could actually more like meet the need of the audience. And yeah, while actually just being themselves. Yeah, it's really amazing. And thank you for sharing. So what role does our community play in podcast growth and sustainable and sustainability today?
Yeah. So podcast growth in general. Do you mean specifically through any platforms or just
Yeah,
across
more
the
like
board? I
what
want to
role
make sure I
does
answer the right way.
community play, community in podcast growth
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, okay.
sustainability today?
Yeah, so community, I think I always ask for clarification around that. I say always. I'm very rarely asked this, Arrow, so thank you
Yeah,
for asking me this first off. But I always like to to define community a little bit because some people immediately say, "Oh, social media means community," but I don't believe that, right? Like so, and I'm glad you just said, "Hey, like community, like what does it really mean, right? Like how does that contribute to growth?"
yeah,
And so, first and foremost, I don't think that community means social media. A lot of people, that's where their brain goes, but
yeah,
it can be. It definitely can be, but that's not the definition of community. Community is a group of people coming together to solve a common problem. That is the definition of community. a group of people coming together to solve a common problem, or if there's not a problem, to be able to level up together, to be part of a tribe, be part of something where they can do something else together. A great way that Seth Godin said it is people like us do
Yeah,
things
do
like
things like
this.
this.
Right? Like, that's such a good way. People like us do things like this. I think that is a great definition, or a further representation of what community stands for. And so, first off, we got to define who are people like us, right? And
Mm,
then what is it that we do together? And so, to me, like growing through a community through podcasting is, in my mind, one of the best ways to grow. Whether you're a podcast guest or host or whatever you might be in between, uh, community is huge with it. But you got to really define those things. What is the purpose of this community? And I find right now that people who run communities through like Circle or through Mighty Networks or through a Facebook group or LinkedIn group or anywhere else, right? They run these air quotes communities, but it's just them posting and being like
yeah.
sharing an update or new episode out now. And it's like that to me doesn't really feel like community, because my foundation for what I consider community is in person. If Aaron, if you and I were staying in a room together and I said, new podcast out now, be sure to listen. Like, that's weird, right? Like,
Yeah.
if I was standing in front of you and said that, you'd be like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about, bro? You know, you'd be like, what are you saying? But if I
Yes,
was
it's
like,
true.
oh, yo, Arrow, guess what, man? I had this new episode come out last week. Dude, you've got to listen to it. I think you're going to love it. Here's the link to it. Like, give me your phone. Next week when we hang out again, like, let me know what you thought. Like, because I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
perspective. I'd really value it. That felt a lot more
Yes.
human, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got to just remember that like community is human. And so for me, like even AI doesn't have much space in it. Like I love AI. I think it's done a lot of good things, but it can't replace people. It
Yeah.
can't become your community manager. Despite popular belief, a lot of people say it can, but in my mind, we've just got to find ways to make it feel more community driven. So when you share your podcast through a community, it's like, hey, we're all doing this together. Arrow shared something beautiful here. Why don't you all take a listen to this? Right?
Yeah.
Like, see, what do you all think of this? What else are we missing here? Like, or is this it? Is this the thing? Right? So you build this energy around it. That, again, people like us do things like this. Like, what are those things? And when you get this really right, that can be a true thriving community. And the thing that I love about it the most is you build out your own marketing wing. Your marketing wing becomes your community. They're going to bring more people that are like you and like them into the conversation, into the room. It does a lot of your work for you, right? You don't have to be out
Yeah.
there like, oh, I got to find more people.
Yeah.
It's going to do it on your behalf. And so for me, like I'm a passionate community builder. I love being in community. And so I just it might be slow and steady. That's the last thing I'll share here on this point is it might be slow and steady, but I've always found that slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to get a viral post that grows your podcast, it's so much better to bring 10 people together that next week are 12, the next
Mm,
week are 15,
yeah.
week after that can be 20, right? Like it's slow and steady, but the thing is like that's going to win versus one viral pop that drops you straight to the top and then straight back down the ground.
Yeah.
And so community is great for longevity. I'm very passionate about this point.
Yeah. Amazing. Community, yeah, is the bedrock when it comes to growth and a whole lot. Especially when you just make reference to the fact that, yeah, a whole lot of growth can actually happen in community, being that now you cannot depend on who are we and more like because people like us do things that very way. Now you can be being that you guys are in the community, you can be able to define what are we going to represent, what should be the goals and everything. And everybody's looking forward to the growth of everyone towards that particular goals and aspiration. And yeah, it's really amazing. And thank you so much for sharing. So how has podcasting changed? Uh, yeah, changed in the last 5 to 10 years. And where is it heading to next? From what you have said.
Yeah. It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
That, um, let's see. I'll go from when I started. So when I started, it was 2020, or sorry, it was 2013,
Oh,
and I was recording just on my phone.
yeah.
So like back then the phones weren't that great. So like it just there wasn't much, and I edited it on my phone, like which now sounds pretty cool. Back then, that was kind of the option that I had without having to go learn stuff. And the quality wasn't great, but the podcast still did pretty good. Not my first one that failed, but my second one did pretty good. Even though I was just doing it that way, but that was like kind of what was in front of us. And so like let's just say that's more than 10 years ago, but that's like 10 years ago. Beyond that, later on, like there wasn't really even an option for video. So when I started leveling up my podcast, I was doing all audio, which there's nothing wrong with, but the video wasn't even an option. And if you were going to record with somebody like we are today, even most people are going to consume the audio of this, but we get to see each other while we're recording,
Yeah.
which to me kind of builds a better
Yes.
connection.
Better connection.
But
Yeah.
10 years ago, you had to turn off your video to record because if you didn't, it was gonna be really laggy and it wasn't gonna be good.
Yeah.
And so, like, you didn't really get the chance to have, like, that feeling or that synergy. So it was like, "Oh, man," like, and not that it wasn't great, but, like, the best conversations happen when you can see another human,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's at least what I believe. So, it was anyway, really cool, to see that happen. And then, like, I'd say 5 years ago, so this is just after, at time of recording, let's just say 2021, we saw the rise of all kinds of great tools in podcasting. We saw AI come on the scene. We saw, like we're using Riverside to
Yeah.
record this right now, which is a great platform that makes it's really good quality, right? You
Yeah.
can go and mix, master, you can do all of it afterwards. The craziest thing though is now if we look today, what I dreamed of having a team doing 10 years ago. So, like 10 years ago, in my wildest dreams, having a team of 30 people, what they could do, I can do myself
Yeah.
almost automatically. Like,
Yeah.
that's how much has changed. Like, think about it, like 10 years ago, you needed a full staff. You're gonna spend tens of thousands of dollars every episode to do what you can do automatically now. Like, that's the change that we've seen. Like, how wild is that? Like, think about having like a $3,000 per episode budget 10 years ago and doing all these things. And now almost anybody can do it if you want to. It still takes work. I'm not saying it's just like
Yeah.
everyone does it. It still takes work. And so it's really been cool to see, like, again, starting on just an iPhone to having audio be the only, you can't even see each other, right? Like to finally be able to see each other, having all these tools, be able to produce all this content around it, like a true large production at the individual independent level. And where I think we're heading is that the best creators are going to start to become the future influencers of the world.
Hmm.
And so what I mean by that is as much as I love social media influencing and stuff like that, I don't do that myself, but like podcasting is becoming the medium that people choose to say this is going to influence me, right? Like and beyond AI,
Yeah.
beyond again social media influencing, beyond and even TV, people are now saying like, oh, the rawest form of information that's helpful comes from a podcast. And so because you can do all these things with it, that really makes people like you, Arrow, like the future influencers of the world. Like people are going to look at you as, hey, that's a leader right there. That's someone who understands this space and how to be an entrepreneur, how to be someone working in a business better than anybody. Like he brings on the people, right? Like he knows who to bring on for this. And so for me, like looking ahead at that, I love it. And so for me, it's like
Yeah.
just giving me this
Yeah.
passion to, it's giving me this passion to equip independent creators knowing what they're going to become. Not because I want to be part of it, just because like, man, let's bring this future into existence because it's a very positive future.
Yeah.
What the impact that podcasting has had on the world has already changed it, and it will continue to change it. I think that's only still heading in a really positive direction. You can tell that by the amount of people who start listening to podcast. Like the listenership change in the last 10 years has been absolutely wild
Yeah.
to see how many more people are listening to shows every single day now. And again, the impact that has on the world in a positive way makes me excited. So that's how I'm seeing podcasting change. To me now, yes, it's audio, it's video, it's written, it's also images, it's everything now, right? But at the end of the day, the core of it stayed the same, which it's one person, an individual who's impacting masses or even just a small community of people, which is fine, but in a really intimate way that causes them to actually change their lives. Again, I absolutely love where this is heading, and that's my vision of it all. I'm excited about.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really amazing, especially what you just shared. And I just look back, looking at my own experience with podcast. Before I actually want to even step into the podcasting space, I have a whole lot of different platforms where I listen to podcasts, and those particular platforms have been more like tribe of mentors for me, having them at different time. And I'm like, oh, the Founders Podcast as an entrepreneur, you should listen to something towards more like creating like how to take over the world and different podcasts, and just listen to them with different topic and different niche. And it has really, really influenced the way I say things differently. And especially when you just make reference of the fact that it's going to be when it comes to influencing what people get to do and depending on the decision they want to make, they would like to dive deeper particular stories that streamline towards those particular audience. And yeah, it's really amazing. And I'm excited towards what is coming into it. So yeah, thank you. For someone just starting today, what would you say is the one thing they should focus on first to grow fast and sustainably?
Yeah, so for someone to really grow quickly, where specifically you want me to focus on this? Like, where do you like grow somewhere specific? You think, or what? Like, where are we
Um,
helping people grow?
Maybe in terms of getting more listeners.
Okay, cool. Because I ask because that can mean a lot of things, right? Like
Yeah.
if they want to grow, like, do you want to grow in your ability to speak? Do you want to grow in your ability to convert, right? So
Yeah.
getting more listeners. First and foremost, it goes back to the beginning of talk, like going back to yourself and saying, okay, what is my internal purpose? What's the external purpose?
Yeah.
And then getting better at delivering upon that through your titles, your descriptions, and your content itself. So, like, getting more listeners is all going to start from that. But beyond that, it turns into community building, which we also talked about here. Like,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean like you building your own community. It means joining the conversation where it's already happening. So what I mean by that is like, listen, use AI, use the internet to figure out like where are people talking about what I do, right? Like my podcast is about this, and I think it's delivering really well. I've got the purposes figured out, the titles, the descriptions, the content itself deliver really well on that. It's very pointed. Where are the people that are looking for this and even talking about it, but don't know that I exist yet?
Yeah.
I think that's really the question. Where are the people that are looking for what I
Mm.
have, but don't know it exists yet? So they're literally talking about it, but they don't know that you're there. You're the that gives you an opportunity to make an introduction to them about what you do. And where a lot of people get that introduction wrong is again, I've mentioned community, right?
Yeah.
I will mention it repeatedly. I don't say, "Hey, check out my latest episode of my podcast." That
Yeah.
feels very forced, and no
Yes.
one's going to actually do that. But if you
That's the
say,
truth.
if you join something and you're like, Arrow, I saw you talking about how to grow a podcast, and that's a topic I'm super passionate about. Here's a podcast episode I just posted where I talked about that. I think it'd be super helpful. Here it
Yeah.
is. I'd love for you to check it out. Let me know if you want to discuss it any further after you check it out. Right? Like that feels very human. And so for me, like getting more listeners, this is my super hack. I hope you're ready for this. And for anyone not a
Yeah.
podcaster, you're about to know more than most podcasters do. This is
Thank
not
you.
popular though. So get ready.
Yeah.
Find one new listener every day.
Mm.
Find one new listener every day. And what I mean by that is, again, joining the conversation. Find somebody who's looking for what you do, but doesn't know it yet, doesn't know you exist yet, right? Go find them and start introducing them to your podcast. I don't mean like immediately be like, again, don't drop the link. And sometimes that first day, you might not even give them a link to your episode. You might just
Yeah.
start the conversation and be like, oh, well, you mentioned this. Like, where are you at in that process? What are you struggling with here? Like, what do you got? What do you got going on? Right? Join the conversation, build a connection, build community with somebody. And then when the time is right, send them a link. But find one new listener every day basically means start the conversation with one person every single day. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people are like, oh, Alex, I really, I'd rather just post about it. I'd rather just like find a faster way to grow. And
Yeah.
like, I get that. Right? Here's the thing. I have been doing this now for, uh, I guess just over 3 years. I've been doing this tactic, and my show on average has about 1,500 people who listen every week.
Yeah.
Well, if you do the math, it's almost like I've gotten just over a listener every day. Some of them start
Yeah.
talking, which I'm grateful
Yeah.
for. But here's the thing: the average podcast gets 28 people listening every week.
Mm.
So 28 people, the average show, you're in top 50% if you get 29 people listening every single week. Could you do this for 29 days and invite one person to listen to your podcast for 29 days? If you can, that puts you in the top 50%. If you can do it for 103 days, so that's 103 people listening to your podcast for 103 days, you invite one new person to listen every day, that puts you in the top 25% of all podcasts. If you do it for just over a year, then it puts you in the top 10%. And that's based off real data. I was literally just looking, I don't know off the top of my head. I had to look it up on our report, right? But like,
Yeah.
that's the numbers. So for every day for a year, you can invite one new person, you're going to end up being in the top 10% of all
Yeah.
shows. And it's like, man, that's like, yes, it's not as fun or as sexy as going out and being like, oh, I just had this viral content, right? Like, it's not that, but slow and steady wins the race. We already
Yeah.
talked about it. So if you're somebody who's saying, hey, I want to grow, I want to reach more listeners, then find them every single day. Just look for one, something you can do. I do this every day still. It takes me between 5 and 15 minutes, depending on how deep the conversation is, but that's worth it to me. I can bring one new person every day. And again, my show now has 1,500 people listening every week, which I'm really grateful for, especially with like a niche show. I have a show about podcasting, so it's super niche, right? Like, but I can find those people. So anyway, that's my growth hack that I like to give to people. Most people don't talk about it. Most people don't do it, but I think for me, I found it really works.
Yeah, amazing. Which find one new listeners every day. And I think it's really lovely thing that now your target is, yes, just one listener every day and an audience of one. When you see it that very way and just engage it in a different way, not being pushy, but just make it conversational and then just chip it in between the discussion. Yeah, this is really, really amazing. So Alex, our PodMatch has really been amazing being that. So when I get started out, I think I did some on-site ones before I actually more like get to come to PodMatch. yeah, and it was quite a bit really demanding before I actually more like get to kind of find PodMatch through a friend of mine. And owing to that, it has really been lovely. So for podcasters, the who are still struggling getting guests and finding how to reach out to guests, and they are still juggling from one platform to the other, I would love you to talk to them about our PodMatch and what offers it actually has for them.
Yeah, well, Aro, first off, thank you for being on the platform. Seriously means so much to me. Like, I can't even express it. So thank you.
Yeah,
So for everybody who's listening and you're like, hey, what is this PodMatch thing? It's a service that connects podcast guests and hosts for interviews. The way we kind of say is it works very similar to how a dating app works, but instead of connecting you for dates, it connects you for podcast interviews. You can message on the platform, you can schedule on the platform. You never have to exchange email if you don't want to. It's got all your information that somebody would need. If you're a guest, it's got your photos, your bio, all the information. If you're a host, it's got all the detail about listeners and stuff like that. We try to make it really streamlined, really simple. And it's been a great time, and people like Arrow on the platform make it amazing. So if you're a podcast host or you're thinking about starting a podcast and you're immediately thinking like, how am I going to find guests? Especially if you're like in a corporate job and it's not necessarily about your corporate job, right?
yeah,
Like if that's you and you're like, well, but I want to do this thing, this is how you can go out and find guests. Like this is exactly what it is. So basically the system will match you with people. But what I always say to do before you even sign up for PodMatch is again, go back to your why behind it
yeah,
and think about who the guest needs to be. Like I get the guests change every time, but in general, like who are they, right? Like what do they need to do? And Arrow, that's something I think you do a really good job with on the show. Like you know who you want to have on as a guest.
yeah,
And so because you've defined that so well, it's easy for you to use PodMatch and to find great guests because you're not like, I'm not really sure.
yeah,
Like, no, you're like, no, I know. I know who listens. I know what they want. I know who they should have. I know I should have on for them. Right. So, um, and I think that that goes a really long way. So if you're somebody who's like, "Hey, I'm struggling with even the thought of getting guests or finding the right people," this type of service is gonna be for you. If you do the work of saying, "I know who I want to have on." Again, it can change over time, but right now, figuring that out is really important. Now, I gotta say though, if you are planning on signing up for Podmatch, please use Arrow's affiliate link. Arrow's a friend of mine, and I wanna be able to say thank you to
yeah,
Eric to Arrow. That's the only way I can say thank you is if you, use his affiliate link. So, Arrow, I don't know how you're gonna get that to people, but put it
yeah.
in the description or something, all right?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. This has really been amazing, especially this particular point when you make reference of, yeah, find one new listener every day. And I think that really jolts me. I'm like, oh, I think there's a work to do here. And it's quite very easy. Just that I've not taken it to heart before now, but having going to this conversation, it make it business so real. I must say a very big thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm so glad for the platform and for what you are doing. And yeah, once again, it's really a pleasure and honor to have you on the show, Alex.
Yeah, man, thank you. If I could leave a final thought real quick here, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't know
yes,
if that's appropriate. I don't wanna I don't there's something that you said on, you and, David, Nassif, maybe was
yeah,
his name?
yeah, honestly.
It was an episode that came out on April 3rd, so it's on this show, everybody. If you've not heard the episode that came out on April 3rd, it was titled, How a Fired, 63-year-old
Yeah,
became a millionaire in
yeah,
6 years.
62 years.
Like
Yeah,
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 go listen to that episode. But one of the things that you all are talking about is many of us are just running in circles without realizing it. Many of us are just running in circles without realizing it. And both of you, you and David both said that. And it really stood out to me because I realized that like, hey, we live in a world that the tools and the things are always evolving. There's always more to do. But are we still just running in circles and not realizing it? It feels like forward motion, but is it?
yeah,
So my advice to everybody here is to really stop and evaluate where you are. Take inventory, use a compass as David talked about, right?
yeah,
Like figure out like where am I right now? Am I still heading north? Like if that's the direction I want to go, am I still heading that way? Or am I heading there slowly? Like what do I need to change? But self-reflection is going to be what makes a difference. Maybe it's time for you to start a podcast. Maybe it's time for you to be a podcast guest. Maybe it's time for you to leave your corporate job or to try to get promoted. But the only way to really know that is to sit back and really think about what do you want? Where are you heading? Where are you at? And so I encourage you, go like my call to action today is to go listen to that episode.
yeah,
Again, it aired on April 3rd. It's really worth listening to. But anyway, I digress. Arrow, you're awesome. And I really appreciate you having me today. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for sharing your insight on productivities, community, and building system that connect creator meaningfully. For my listener, remember, growth in podcasting is not just about contents, but about connection, consistency, and clarity. Once again, it's really a pleasure and an honor having you on the show, Alex.
Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.